pleasure to have you here. It's actually an honor. You've been practicing for what, more than
23 years. As an oral maxillofacial surgeon, yeah, 23 years.
23 years. And are you still passionate about it right now? Where did you start, like at the very beginning when you started? Like you came from Iran, am I correct?
So, yeah, if you want to know the whole background,
Yeah.
1976, we landed in Montreal at Mirabel Airport, and I still remember the farms, as the bus took us from the airport to, I didn't know where we were going. It was a long story about how we left, maybe political right now, but when we left, we had left everything behind. We had our house. We basically put the food on the table to show that we were actually still staying there. So we made the dinner and everything and left the food on the table. And then we left in the middle of the night and flew to Switzerland to Montreal. And my dad knew a friend in Drummondville. So we basically got off the plane and ended up on a farm in Drummondville in September of 1976. I was 6 years old. I was like, I didn't understand where we were going. And and I remember to this day a conversation I had with another child on, I think it was Swiss Air we were flying on, and I was 6, and we were talking, and I couldn't speak any language. He couldn't speak any language. I was Iranian. I never spoke anything other than, I never went to school, by the way, in Iran. So I was about to start elementary school at that time. And when I came here in Montreal, I couldn't speak English, I couldn't speak French, and so they put you in something called classe d'accueil, which is a assimilation school for immigrants. And so then your first year is French. So I went into that French system for a year, and then my dad fought Bill 101 to get me into an English school, which is a whole other story. But finally got into an English high school, in elementary, but I couldn't speak. So I was put in grade 2, and because I was 7 by the time, but I never went to school. So I didn't know my ABCs. I didn't know how to speak. So I see people talking, but I didn't understand, because I went from a French school for 6 months or so, and then to an English school, and then grade 2, but I never went to kindergarten, so I didn't know my ABCs. So I was put in, and they said there was something wrong with this kid. So they said he's too big to go to kindergarten, because I was 7. They couldn't put me in with 5-year-olds. So they put me in grade 1, so they put me back a year. And my brother got put ahead a year because he'd gone to school, and you know how the Middle Eastern system's so far ahead. So he was put ahead by a year, and I was put back by a year. And anyway, so struggled a lot in the early days to try to catch up, and grew up in Ville La Salle, which is kind of a it was a rougher area at the time, and so got through that. I mean, I don't know how much details you want to know, but the beginnings were harsh. As immigrants, my dad came in. He studied at La Sorbonne. He had a PhD, and he said PhD in Canada is plumbing, heating, and drain. PhD it's useless. So couldn't use it. He was a physics teacher in high school, and he said if I teach in Canada, I mean I'll get thrown in jail, because he goes, we can't discipline the kids. And my dad was used to physically disciplining kids in school. That was the way they taught back in the day. So he couldn't teach. And so then he started working as an electrician, and then he lost the job and became unemployed. And he showed us one year his full year revenue was $5,000 for a family of 5. It was $5,000, and I still remember that day we were in the basement, and he showed us the revenue. He said, this is all I can do, and you guys need to get a job, and you guys need to work. And so we started, as a young kid, starting to work, and my brother, when you get back to the hustle days, I was telling you, my brother, while he was going to university, got a flea market business, and we would sell women's clothing in a flea market, which is 2 guys, selling women's clothing. So he'd pick me up from school, we'd rush out to Saint Eustache and get up the tent and everything set up for the next morning at 7 a.m. And we didn't know where the women should be changing their clothes, because we want to show them clothes, but we didn't have a change room. So we found a box where a fridge came in, and we took the box from the fridge, where it's a big box, and I cut a door into it, and it made it open and close. And I would say to the ladies, well, you can go in the box and change if you want to try the clothes on. So I learned a lot from hustling in a flea market where everybody's surviving to try to make $1. And, sometimes you go home and you hadn't sold a single thing. And then you drive back and you pay for gas, you pay for food, and you've lost money. So, those were my early days. And then
nice memories.
Yeah, I mean, it was very interesting memories. You know, when you're in it, you don't realize it, but some of these things shape your life, right?
Absolutely. Hassan, do you like sushi?
I'm not a big fan of raw
Yeah.
food.
I wanted to tell you about that. Why? Because there's that legendary sushi chef. His name is Jiro Ono. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He actually created a sushi bar. He opened a sushi bar in the 60s. And what happened is that before opening the sushi bar, it's a sushi bar opened in the basement of a big building next to Ginza Station in Tokyo, and like it's a hidden place. And before opening this place, he spent like decades as a young child to actually become, I would say, one of the best in his specialty. Like he was perfecting every detail to from fish selection to rice temperature and everything. And after opening this place is still open, by the way. Today, if you want to book a reservation at this place, you need to book a year in advance. It's a Michelin star. You barely have 10 seats in the place, and the guy is booked, and it's supposed to be one of the best sushi place in the world. That guy, I think he got inspired and he had passion. He actually built passion through his way, like why he was like working. He built this passion. Usually today in the society, we say that you must start with a passion. You must have a passion in order to succeed, right? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, we talked about this before, and if you talk to somebody called Sam Zell, who's very, very famous, multi-billion-dollar real estate empire in the U.S., he says, when rich people and successful people get in front of these younger people, they say, follow your passion. That's all you need to do, and then you'll make it. And he says, that's, excuse my language, bullshit, because that's not what happens. What happens is that you start working at something and working at something, and you fail, and then you get better, and you absolutely stick to that one thing, and you work at it so long that you become so good at it that you become so easy, and then everybody else in that pyramid that was trying to do what you were doing falls off. Then you become the best of the best in that thing, and once you reach that pinnacle, there's nobody else around you, and it's so easy. So then your entire market is yours, and then you come out and say, yeah, I'm successful, this is my passion. But it wasn't really your passion. It became your passion because you became so successful at it. So people miss that, right? I mean, I'm not saying that people shouldn't follow their passion, but I think that when people get in front of you and they're so successful and you say, follow your passion, you say, well, I want to write a book. I'm going to go to Italy and write a book. It's not so simple. You have to be the best person at that book writing in the world, then it becomes successful. But I think one of the key things as I'm listening to you and I was thinking back of what, my childhood, I always wanted to invent as a child. I always was curious. And I think it's not so much passion, but it's curiosity. And I see it in my own kids, right? And so when you're questioning and you're asking and you're curious and you just take stuff apart and you want to know why things work. That's what I would take a tape recorder apart and I want to understand how that motor works, right? And I take the motor apart and I see it's got two little magnets with a wire, and then you put the electricity on those wires, it gets magnetized and the thing spins, and I try to do it in my hand. And then I take one magnet away and it didn't work. And so I kept trying to play with it. I was like, oh, okay, that's how it works. Then I would put that back together and make a remote control car because I understood the parts of it. So in 1988, I won the Montreal Board of Trade Science Fair. And what I called it was the 99-cent robotic arm. I built a robotic arm in my basement, but it cost me 99 cents because I used everything in my house, which was the tape recorders for the motors, fishing wire, and it had basically strings and with the motor turning, and it would open and close these little pieces of wood on springs. But the only thing that cost me 99 cents was I had to buy 3 switches from the store. So it's an on-off switch. I had to buy that. Anyhow, and when I brought that up, I came to realize that it's not about, how fancy your invention is or how it's just you're able to take something that's nothing and make it into something. And I think also from failing, right? You'd build this thing and it would crumble. You'd build it again and it would crumble. And then you try to figure it. You'd spend hours and hours and hours trying to figure it out. And that, I think, is the journey. And that's how you get the passion through trying.
Amazing, amazing. So you think this idea that the society is giving the generation, the young generation, Gen Z generation, even the old generation about you have to be passionate about something in order to succeed is actually not 100% true.
Yeah.
So okay,
I would rephrase that. I would say you have to be really good at something, not just passionate, but good and an expert in it.
that's how you become also yeah, you become an expert, and at the same time you develop passion because it becomes very easy for you to do it.
You become easy, you become an expert, you become the world, renowned person in that particular field. Everyone's looking up to you in that field, and then you turn around, you're like, wait a minute, like, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is what I do. And I'm like, wow, it's pretty good, right? It's kind of an evolving thing.
Amazing. Hassan, imagine a world where money doesn't exist, okay? And the way we know, at least. And instead of being rewarded for our work with money, you would be rewarded with dopamine spikes. Imagine that. I know it sounds crazy. It's a strange idea, I know, but maybe it says something about how we really measure value and satisfaction. How would you see it? Like, what do you think about that?
Well, that's what Instagram is, right? Instagram is us getting our rewards with dopamine every time we get a like or a view, and it's just another currency, right? And I think it's funny. I posted on Instagram a couple of days ago the confessions of a purse junkie. And so what happened in this girl, she was an immigrant from China, and she had no money in all her life. She just worked. She became an engineer, and she hated her job. But what happened was she got enough money, and she bought a purse. And she said the amount of dopamine you get in that first purse, it was so amazing. And what she found is that the next purse that she bought didn't get the same high, so she had to go to a more expensive thing, right? And then you want to buy something. Then it's like a drug that you need more and more. That's why people overdose, right? If you take fentanyl, you take 100 micrograms, that gets you a hit. But then the next hit, you got to take 150. Right? So as you get these dopamine hits, you get a really dopamine low after. So I think that what she found is that if you did the same thing on experiences rather than purchases, the more money you spent on an experience, that dopamine hit continued to grow because it was an experience rather than a material thing. So I think what people are looking for today now is they're moving away from material things. They're moving away from money as a currency of happiness, and they're looking towards experiences as the currency of happiness. And I realized that when I did a Camino, I did the Camino de Santiago. We did 750 kilometers in 21 days. You're mostly by yourself, but you're meeting unbelievable people. Stayed at hostels that were, the max I spent was 10 euros a night. You sleep with 40 other people in a room. There's no shower, all that kind of stuff. I spent the entire month 1,000 euros. I actually had money left over. And I've spent that in a hotel in one night. And if you ask me, one of my most memorable experiences in my entire life was this experience. None of it cost money, but the journey of meeting these unbelievable people that had stories that I could never imagine. This person was spreading the ashes of their son that they buried along the way, and talking to that person was unbelievable. So,
Do you think the society brought us far from the truth of what the real meaning of excitement, of pleasure in life actually is? Because we're all in these big cities, these big business cities, trying to, work our ass off, make money, and the day is passing very fast. The week is passing so fast. So that travel, that thing that you did, actually you were actually in contact with the people day by day, and meeting them, knowing their stories, their background, where they're coming from. Actually, it feels like it gave you more pleasure than just earning money. You know what I mean?
So my dad was probably one of the happiest people alive. He died with $10,000 of debt that we paid, and his two other best friends, who some of them listening to this would hear, they were financially much better off, and they were all three of them were teachers, but then the other two got into businesses and stuff. And my dad had no stress. He had good children, and he never owned a car. We had a very basic house, and he would take the bus everywhere. And he was so happy. So when I would see that, I mean, there's two sides to that. Unfortunately, what it did for us as kids is that we never had anything. So then we became this super achiever, wanting to have all the things we never had, which is a whole other problem we can discuss. And it's called the scarcity issues that we had, because you're always worried you're not going to have. So then when you start becoming successful, you're still worried. And I remember one of my staff turned around to me and said, "Why are you working? Like, you have everything. You have everything you want. You have the best, financials, the cars, the house, the family, your wife, your children." And I said, it's because you're always scared of losing what you have, because you came from nothing, right? And that's a very big immigrant mentality, right? It's different than, if one of your children comes on and you give them, $1 million, well, they have no idea, right? So they just blow through it. So to just get back to your question, is that I think that corporations and everything, they have to be driven by revenue. So they have to make us want. I met this unbelievable guy who Bill Goldstein is his name. And he said, I was in advertising in New York. And I woke up one day and I had a 3-year-old daughter. And I looked at my daughter and I said, I do not want my daughter to see what I do for a living. And he says, I make you feel really bad about yourself, so you buy something. So I create ads to make you feel bad about something you don't have, and then you buy. And he looked at himself and he says, that's not what I want my daughter to see me at. He quit. He sold his advertising agency, moved to Miami, and opened up a car shop, a vintage cars, vintage guitars, and vintage watches. And it's called Walt Grace, because he listened to the song by John Mayer, Walt Grace. He kept listening to the song that says, I went in my basement, I had a library card, the words are, I have a library card and a dream, and I built a one-man submarine, and I went across the world. And everyone said I was crazy, and my wife said I was going to die, but I did it. So I finally flew out to meet him. I said, I read your story. I said, this is crazy. He said, yeah. He said, I'm so much happier now.
Amazing. It's great that you mentioned this, the childhood thing, because I know that the childhood has literally an influence, like what you have in your childhood, it has an influence on your future, correct? You always see these, usually you see that some kids who grew up having everything, um, they struggle to stay motivated when they're adults, and these kids who didn't have a thing, okay, they're gonna do everything in the whole process, okay, to get what they never had. And sometimes it's a process, how big you think, Hassan, the childhood would influence a human behavior in success in life? And I'm sure you have something to tell us.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story. So we landed in 1976, and then we went to the park in LaSalle. And there was a swimming pool there called Riverside Swimming Pool. And some of my friends listening to this in Montreal will know exactly what I'm talking about. And me and my brother were hanging on the fence like this, with our fingers through the fence. And we would see all these kids, and they had like a little tag on their bathing suit. And then we said to these kids, I said, how do we get into that swimming pool? We're on the outside, and we want to be on the inside. And we're looking, there was a baseball field where we were playing catch, and that was free, to go there. And the kid looked at me, he says, if you save up all your pennies, you'll never get into this pool. You'll never have enough money. I said, how many pennies do I need? He said, 100. You need 100 pennies. I said, how am I going to find 100 pennies? I can't even fathom. He said, you'll never get into the pool. And that's when I said to myself, you know what? I want to get in that pool one day.
How old were you?
I was 7.
Wow.
And that changed. And when I saw that, I said, that's it. They're on the other side. I'm on this side. And I need to find a way to get inside that pool. And
have you ever had, when you were young, something, it can be an object, it can be, I don't know, clothes, something that you wanted to have, but you never had it, and that actually influenced in your life like you work to get this thing that you never got before. Have you got
Yeah,
this?
yeah. I mean, so many times, we were. I was just actually seeing here in the mall. There's a store called Yellow, and I think it says open since 1976. I see the sign on it. So my parents, again as immigrants, we would have to buy shoes, and back then there were plastic shoes called North Stars. They were plastic with 3 ribbons, like an Adidas look, but they were plastic, right? So we would wear those, and because I had to wear my brother's shoes, I had to wear like size 7 or 8 when I was in grade 3, and because he was 4 years older than me. So then I would stuff newspapers at the front because I was so embarrassed. I was going to school like a clown with feet that were size 7, and I was like 8 years old, and they said, "Yeah, these are not your shoes. These are no way. These are your shoes." I said, "Yeah, feel my toes. My toes are right there." I stuff it with newspaper, so when they pinched the toes, my toes they felt something hard. So I had to do that all the time. And I'd see everybody wearing Nikes, right? And I'd see that swish. And my Greek friends, Nike is from the Temple of Athena. That's where the idea came. If you read the story, right? And so the Greeks have this connection to Nikes, and so they would buy the latest Nikes. And man, I could never have Nikes. And one time, there's a store on Peel Street called Murray's. It's closed now. And then when I was going to university, I saw these pair of Nikes. And so I said, okay, I'm going to finally buy them. And I kept going, and I kept waiting for the price to go down, And I was waiting for them to go on special. And then finally they sold out, and they never had them again. Till this day, I've been trying to look for those Nikes, because if I can ever find them, I want to buy them. But that's that chase, right? And some of it is healthy, some of it is not, by the way. But these are things that happen to you as a child, and it's all how you take it, right?
100%. Nice story. But did you replace these Nikes with something else?
I knew you were going to get to that. And that's a whole other story. My dad, really wasn't interested in cars, never wanted cars. He thought it was a very bourgeoisie thing. He was against the rich, because we were always not rich. And he thought that the rich were bad, and that they steal money. And so he had a very negative connotation of being rich. So anyhow, we grew up that way. And my dad, had very big communist beliefs. And at home, we sat on the floor, we ate on the floor, very Persian style, but really not much furniture, very basic stuff. So when I got older, I started, admiring cars. I started getting into cars, and but not for the financial side of it, but I love mechanics. I would love engines. I love the intricacies, and I love the old stuff. So I started getting into cars. I started reading books and magazines on it, and then I started collecting cars, and it's become a big part of my life. If people who know me understand that it's a big part of my life. So
Hassan, sometimes people, they achieve everything in their life. Okay? They get all the career, the best career, recognition, everything. But even when they are at the top of the mountain, they still feel there's something missing. I know you are at the top of the mountain. You struggled for it, and it's amazing, and I respect that. Have you ever felt that something was missing?
I think when you're, and I don't think I'm at the top of the mountain, but I think when you're somewhere up there, it's lonely. And there's a couple things. There's very few people, and I don't mean just success or finances, but when you're that driven, you become infatuated and focused on all these things, and it becomes lonely because there's less and less people that are like you in that sense. And then you achieve these things. For example, buying, this one car. From a car, I choose the most impossible car that's out there. It's so hard to find. It's so hard to buy. And then I go for it, and then I get it. And then I would do that, and I would get it in my garage, and I'd say, okay, now I got it. So what? Now let's go find something that's even more impossible. And I would do it. And then I started realizing, you know what? That's the wrong journey, because it doesn't have that hit anymore. But then I realized it wasn't the car that I was after. I needed something really difficult. And so then you keep doing that, and then you realize you're now getting all these things, the accolades, you're whatever, the top surgeon, the the house, the car, whatever you're trying to achieve academically. You've published papers, you've lectured, for example, one of my highlights was I lectured, at the International Congress of Oral Maxillofacial Surgeons in Vancouver. I've lectured in Australia. It was one of the highlights of my career, and I've achieved all that. And then I said, I want to have an invention, and then we've gotten patents, and now, as you know, I don't want to talk about it until it happens, but we're on our way to having something hopefully developed, and that was a big childhood dream of mine. But then you still say to yourself, you're inside. I mean, I don't know how to call it, but there's still somehow a depression. And I think that's a disease of people that are ultimately so hard driven that it's hard for them to be happy with what they have. And I think that the hardest thing in life, the hardest thing for me anyway, it is right now, is to really understand, to step back. My son was 14 years old, and he said, "Dad, you have all these things, but you don't have experiences." And that's why I went on the Camino after what he said to me. So I think it's lonely up there, and I think it's something that you have to step back, and you always feel you're not good enough. Right? You always feel this insecurity that you're not good enough because you're constantly trying to get better, and so you have this fight, and it's very hard to sit back and say, wow, you look back down the mountain and you say, look where I came from. And I think the answer to that is, what I figured, is gratitude. Is really the answer. Is I think that when you look at what you've accomplished, but also just to be healthy, to be happy, to have a great family, to have great children, to have all those other things that you have, and you look back and you say, wow, I'm so fortunate. I think gratitude, so far for me, has been the answer to staying happy.
Amazing. I like this. I like this answer. I don't think Darwin said the same thing. This is where it's coming from. We call it Darwin depression. This guy, very respectful guy who actually did all this research about, science, life, where we're coming from, the survival of humanity, of human race, actually. And at one point, after 27 years, he realized, and there's something missing. He got all this information. Not sure if he was depressed because he realized what life was about, but he got into that, and we called it the
He was depressed. He was actually depressed.
But no one knows about that. It's crazy, huh? Because this guy discovered something crazy, and all the evolution and everything, and he was depressed.
I think, and if I'm correct too, also he discovered that early in his life, and then forever later, he was always trying to do something that he could never up that what he had done. I think, and this is crazy, I don't know I'm saying this here, but there is some amount of depression that is needed to be successful. I don't know how I can even come up with that, but I don't know how, but it's some amount of unhappiness that you need to keep you going for something more, if I can answer. And it's not healthy. I don't know how to explain it. But it's innate in these people. I see it. I don't know.
I get you. Have you heard, I'm sure you've heard of this guy, Johann Sebastian Bach, the musician, the composer. He once said something very true that is very interesting. He was saying that he was not finding pleasure only in composing music and getting all the applause of the people, but actually in teaching. This is the crazy part. So when he was teaching, the importance of pleasure and the gratification he got from teaching, he was not expecting anything, but it was so huge and nothing compared to all the applause of all the people who were here around him, congratulating him and telling him, oh, what an amazing song, what amazing music, what a masterpiece. And he found his pleasure in actually giving back, okay? Why I'm saying that? Because I know you're a teacher too, and you teach in several universities during the month, and I'm sure you're doing it for something. Not only like just, like you're doing something and it's bringing you something.
I think if you look at the journey, is first you learn, then you get mastery, and then after mastery, you go to teaching. And the other thing is, I was listening to this, is as you get older, as you actually lose your skills, and this is what happened to Bach, by the way, is his hearing, eyes, but as you start, your skills actually start changing. What happens is the value is in your brain. Especially for surgeons, is that as we start getting older and older and older, our actual skills will drop, and at some point, but your brain is very valuable. But what I found was that, you could do the most unbelievable surgery, and not everybody is grateful. You can kill yourself and do the craziest surgery, have the craziest results, and yes, you make money, but the money is very transactional. It doesn't really give you anything. Some patients are very, very happy, but when I find, like, my residents on Friday night are texting me this case, they're like, Dr. Moghadam, like, this case is so complicated. What are we going to do? You're coming on Monday. Here's what I have planned for you. And I drive 4.5 hours one way to Toronto to teach in the perio department, and then we'll do a surgery, and I'll be there, 3 hours, and I'll drive another 4.5 hours back. And so it's 9 hours of driving for 3-4 hours of teaching. But I look forward to it because they're so excited. I'm so excited. And it's like you're able to transcend this information that you've had over 30 years to somebody else that's just starting. I think that's probably the pinnacle of our careers, is then when you become a teacher, because you're really a master, but you're also able to share. And the joy that I see in these kids, and first of all, these kids are super motivated, so it's such a pleasure to be with these kids. Then they make me feel young. It makes you feel like you have value. So I think that's a great part of it. It's a very selfish thing, because I feel that I have value of something to give, and that really is what was important. And then seeing them really enjoy it, and then take that on and make it even better, is, I think, a unique.
I think you're being rough on yourself saying that you're being selfish because you said something, you said one word, you see joy on their face. That was enough. That's it, Hassan. This is where it's coming from. You see joy, you see that you're giving something back to young generation. And because of that, you said, okay, I did something. This is how I'm seeing it, right? I did something in life and I'm helping someone else to succeed. And this is why it makes you happy. It's a big gratification for you. Okay, I did something great. And now I'm seeing that my work this is the return of what I'm giving, the joy I'm seeing on their face. Because you said it, sometimes patients, they don't know that you did that big surgery, and sometimes they have no gratitude. So I think this is what you said. It's exactly that. It's the joy that you're seeing on their face, and the love of teaching and the love of giving back. I think this is an important thing in life.
No, I think it's very rewarding, and not everybody sees it that way. And I think it depends on the stage of career you're in. But teaching obviously it doesn't reward you financially, but the way it rewards you is so much more than financial. And unfortunately, if you're a really, really busy surgeon, it's very hard for you to teach, right? So that's where I've been very, very fortunate, where I say, no, you know what? I said, a couple of years ago, I stepped back and I said, you know what? Just doing surgery every day isn't stimulating for me. And so I started taking a day off. I'd go to a coffee shop and I'd watch all these people go around me and hustle. And I'm like, wow, the whole world is spinning and I'm just sitting here. And then I can think. And that's when I started coming up with all my ideas and inventions. And because when you're in it, you can't be out. So they always say, do you want to own the donut shop or do you want to work on the donut shop? So, so being on the outside, watching in, is a kind of where you can start coming up with ideas and stuff. So I really do believe there's a great book called The One Thing. I think it's called The One. And it's basically, it talks about setting time aside for yourself every week, an hour, untouchable. Like, it's just 1 hour, nobody can get to you. And that's kind of how it started.
Great. I'm gonna end up on this, Hassan. It's a question that I usually ask at the end, and I'm interested to see what you think about it. You know that okay, life moves very fast, and sometimes we miss the chance to say things to people. Maybe people who are alive, not alive, but we miss the chance to say something, give an information, apologize, anything. And I'm sure everyone experienced that. Okay, if you had the chance to go back, let's say, or even now, actually, you can do it. Uh, you can pick up anyone. Okay, who would you choose to tell them something that you never told them, and what would it be? I know it's very personal
Oh,
now,
that's really hard. Wow.
but I know sometimes we have this deep down. It's here,
Mm.
and we're always like, tomorrow I'll do it. Okay, next week I'll do it. Next time I see this person, I'll do it. But we never take the step. We never do it because we're just busy in our life. It's normal. It's like regular life, human being life. But now I'm putting you on the spot.
Mm.
So if you had the chance to say something to someone, maybe in the past, someone that you knew, and you regret that you never got the chance to say that thing, who would it be, and what would you say?
Yeah. I think in 2001, I was towards the end of my residency, but I was defending my master's thesis, and I was completing my surgical rotations and my maxillofacial training in Toronto. And my dad had terminal colon cancer, and after we knew that he wasn't going to make it, we brought him to Montreal, and I was at his bedside, but I was working on my master's thesis because I had to defend my master's at the same time as going through my program. So I didn't get an extra year or 2 years to do my thing. I had to do it inside, which is fine. We were able to get it done, but it was a lot of work. So I was doing all these things, and my dad was, terminal. Within a couple of days, he was going to pass away. So I'd come down, and then I had to go back, and he had then lost the ability to speak or anything, and he had an NG tube down, and basically he wanted to die, and he asked me if they can give him an overdose, so he can pass away. And the nurses said, no, we're not allowed. This is 2001, so there was not, MAID did not exist. So we stopped feeding him. So essentially, unfortunately, a lot of people go that way. And so he slowly just went down and down and down. And, I don't think he could hear me anymore or talk. And when I asked him, I said, do you want to die? And he couldn't talk. And I said, blink your eyes. And he blinked his eyes. And I understood that that's what he wanted. And so that's when we decided to stop feeding him and everything. And, this whole time I was defending my master's, I had to go back and forth. I was never able to spend this personal time to actually have that last father-son conversation with him, and I just wanted to really, it's very emotional now that I'm talking about it, because I've never really thought about it this way, but I wish I had more time with my father. And I think I would have really loved to have him see my children. That's the one thing I always wanted him to see, and my children I'd love to see him. So, I spent a lot of time in school and studying, and if I had known, he was going to pass away, maybe I would have taken a month off, or that didn't exist back in our day, right? And it is what it is. I'm sure a lot of people have the same situation, but yeah, it would have been nice to have spent the last few days with him, to talk to him and ask him. I had a lot of questions about his life that I would have loved to ask him.
What? Give me one question. You can give him, like, you can ask him now.
Yeah.
What would it be?
I always wanted to know, why, he why he was so religious. And he was religious for his own purpose. It was very personal for him. He never implied it on us. But something happened in his life that made him become religious, and I never know what that was, but I would have loved to have asked him that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hassan. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was a pleasure having you, and I know that since I've been like I knew you since already 2000, like what we met in 2017 maybe. It's always a pleasure to share these moments with you. Like we had a lot of talks, and you've been someone who was very inspiring to me, honestly. It's and I think we all the generation, like young, middle generation, old generation, every generation should listen to people who actually had experience, and because you got a lot to learn, got a lot to learn, and I think it's very important to listen and take the time to listen. Everything is going too fast. Take the time.
I think when we met, we shared some very emotional times that we've had in our lives, and that's how we connected, and that bond has brought us together. And here we are today. I think you have a unique way of getting into somebody's head and bringing things out, and I think that's really unique about you, because you're naturally interested in people and not yourself. It's not a selfish thing that you're doing. I think you really want to do this for everybody else, and it's really exciting. And I think I don't know who's going to listen to this today, but even if they don't, it'll be me and you, and we had a good time. So